From a top-secret network of highly secure locations across South Texas, this is the Spurs Insider Podcast, brought to you again by our friends at Taco Palenque, where you can get the best fajitas in Texas. You can stop by there for the new limited-time chicken al pastor quesadilla and pirata. As always, you can try the margaritas. They got lime, they got mango, they got guava. Guava is available for a limited time. We do not have limited time on this podcast. Although we do think Taco Palenque, it's the best place for a pre or post game meal watching the Spurs. I am your host, Mike Finger, joined by our usual panel of Express News beat writers Tom Orsborn and Jeff McDonald. Sports editor Nick Talbot is with us, and one of these four panelists is actually diving headfirst into the partnership with Taco Palenque, and may or may not be at a secure location, connecting to Wi-Fi, connecting to the internet, connecting to this podcast. How is it there, Jeff?
I thought we were supposed to be undisclosed. Now,
there's many locations throughout South Texas.
Now all our fans are just going to converge on this Taco Palenque like it's Beatlemania or something, and rip my clothes off and stuff.
The thing about Taco Palenque is that there are many locations across South Texas. So unless they wanted to go to every single one of them, which might be a project for the listeners, they're not necessarily going to find you, even though you have disclosed a possible place where your location is. That doesn't mean that they can narrow it down to,
it's not really a risk,
the top 10.
It's not a risk I would like to take, but we've already taken it. I guess we're not going to edit this out, so I'll be long gone by the time this posts, I guess, so I guess it's okay.
There you go.
You're safe. Yeah, it's okay.
Lots to talk about, even though this is a dead period for your local Cagers. The Spurs in the month of September have nothing scheduled. It's like the deadest month of the year. There's no Hall of Fame, which we covered last time. There shouldn't be any big roster moves. That was taken care of in July. No Summer League, no preseason yet. Media Day will start the first week of October. But we do have a new schedule to talk about. It turns out the Spurs are probably going to play 82 games, maybe 83 if they win the big in-season tournament that Jeff McDonald loves and Tom Orsborn is looking forward to. Lots of national TV games. Since the last time we recorded a Spurs Insider podcast, we have the whole thing in front of us. Tom, what sticks out to you?
Well, I like the opener, man. I think that's going to be a lot of fun with the Mavericks coming to town, and Wemby gets an introduction to the Texas rivalries with games against Dallas and Houston right off the start. And the rodeo road trip is broken up as usual. Got the two games in Austin, March 15th and March 17th at the Moody Center. It's got a lot of high points to it. I like the two Laker games. Let's see, not back to back, but two consecutive games in San Antonio at the newly named Frost Bank Center, December 13th and 15th against the Lakers, both on TV. 2 of 19 nationally televised Spurs games with the Wemby effect in full force.
See, people talk about how the national media has this love affair with the Lakers, who aren't good, haven't been good in a while, and it's us. We're supposedly the small market team that should be sticking up for the small market teams. We asked the small market beat reporter who's lived in this small market his entire life. From the very beginning, Tom Orsborn has lived in San Antonio, Texas. San Antonio to the bone. And what it stands out to him on this schedule, what's the one opponent that he mentions? The Los Angeles Lakers. You're just feeding into this whole problem that we've been dealing with in the NBA going back generations. People care about the Lakers when the Denver Nuggets just won the championship. The Lakers were terrible last year. Why are you looking forward to Lakers games, Tom?
San Antonio to the bone means that you go back and you look at the historic rivalry between those two franchises.
Okay.
You know,
What do you want him to say? You're looking forward to the big visit from the Charlotte Hornets?
it's muscle
I'm
memory.
just saying.
What's he supposed to say?
We might as well be doing one of those daytime TV shows on the sports networks where they come up with their hot takes, and all their hot takes have to do just to get ratings. They have to talk about LeBron. Is that what we've sunk to, trying to get ratings on this podcast? Is to talk about two Lakers games
Tom would have to
3
yell
months
a lot.
away?
Tom would have to yell and scream a lot more to be a star on one of those shows. I don't think
That's
he has
true.
it.
My gosh, the chance to see 2 games with LeBron James, fingers crossed, a guy at his age doing what he's doing, incredible. I mean, that's a chance to see a once in a lifetime athlete, NBA player.
But you've seen him many, many times before. And he is, I will say, we've talked about this on the podcast before. He's one of those guys where even if you're not a basketball fan, you just sense this guy is something special. I would, if you haven't got the chance to do it before in your lifetime, go watch LeBron James play in person. It's something. And like, he's ridiculously hyped. And the media, local and national, talk about him too much. But man.
Well, the passing of the torch from him to Wemby, you know, I know that's a little over the top, but I mean, Wemby's the most highly touted NBA rookie since LeBron James in 2003. So
that's true.
Yeah. A lot of story angles in that one, Mike.
I apologize, Tom. What, Jeff?
No reason to apologize, Finger, because part of that, I just got curious and was looking. Anyone want to take a guess at how many Lakers games are televised next year? No
Nationally?
Guessing? Nationally.
I think I knew
40.
this, but
I don't.
40 is exactly right.
That's because I do my research on this show. I was looking up what each team has on national television. I got them all. Just you quiz me on any of them. No, please don't, because I'm full of it.
40 games on national television. As Finger said, they weren't that great last year. And the Spurs are over the moon about having 19 televised games after, what was it, the year before they had 4, if you count NBA TV, if not 1?
Yeah. And the interesting thing about those 19 national televised games, it's all front-loaded on the schedule. Like, you get to about February, and there's none. And I think that gives you a clue, even now, what the league sort of thinks the Spurs are going to do. And they may not be wrong. You know, lots of Wemby interest at the beginning of the year, and then probably, not a playoff run at the end, with Wemby maybe shut down a little at the end. And so I don't.
The caveat there is I don't think they're expecting Wemby to be shut down. And the caveat there is, like, if the Spurs do become a contender type, the NBA always has the option to flex things around and add some games late. But I think your point is well taken, that they're trying to jump on the early Wemby hype train and then play it by ear from that point on.
All right.
What else sticks out to you, Jeff?
We milked like 5 minutes out of that. What else you got?
Well, you haven't told us your impressions of the schedule.
Like, I want to make the tired joke about there's 82 games and 41 at home and 41 away, but it's not true. We don't even know the whole schedule to do that.
Here it's a mess.
Yeah, we
There
get to
will
wait a while to find out about that week in December. It's like Christmas come early.
There will be another home game and another road game in there, so there will be 41 and 41. And I believe we've narrowed it down doing some detective work. Not that anybody cares, but the most likely road game that week is either the Lakers or the Clippers, because those are the Western Conference teams that still have and the Western Conference teams that aren't in the Spurs pod, that they could have a extra road game played against without going over the usual allotment. Basically, I'm saying that first week of December, I bet they go on the road to play either the Lakers or the Clippers if they're not in the in-season tournament championship bracket. I think we talked about Minnesota or Utah coming.
Well, what if all those teams are in the bracket? What if the Lakers and Clippers are both in the championship bracket? I don't know how any of this works, I'll admit. I
There's
don't know.
options. It gives them flexibility, but what I'm saying is the most likely extra trip is to Los Angeles to play the Lakers or Clippers. The most likely extra home game, I think, we were talking about this the other day. I think it was Minnesota and Utah, or one of those types. But anyway, I guess just overall oddities about the schedule. There's another long trip in January. That might be as long as either half of the rodeo road trip. There are the 2 games in Austin that were, instead of the last 2 games of the year, as they were last year, they got moved up a month to where they're still after the UT basketball schedule, which I don't think UT was excited about having the Spurs in town to compete for the ticket buying public's money during their season, and that makes sense. Now it's kind of during the NCAA tournament, during the conference tournament, also during South by Southwest, which is not good news for potential hotel buyers, hotel renters for those Spurs games that week.
Or traffic.
Or traffic.
As far as the Spurs go themselves, though, it's not the last 2 home games of the season, which I think was just that sucks. And as much the Spurs last year wanted to pretend like it didn't suck and that it was just fine and they'd do it the same way over if they had to. I mean, obviously they wouldn't, because now they get to move it up smart, which makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
You just don't want your last home games of the year to be played somewhere else. Especially if it ever gets to a time where you're fighting for a playoff berth there. But even without that, like in their last 2 games or somewhere else, this doesn't add up. So I think this is a better, and that's a better spot for it. And I think as you mentioned, it also pacifies UT as well. You know, I think we talked last year when the Austin games came out, like the perfect spot for them is somewhere during that rodeo trip. So the Spurs can't be in their building anyway. But I guess UT is never going to go for that in the middle of February. So March makes as much sense as anything else.
And to be clear, UT isn't on the record saying we don't want the Spurs around during that time, but I think it's sort of a courtesy. Like the one development from this summer that we haven't talked about, probably because it's not worth too extensive of a conversation, but like the Spurs went up all their brain trust. You had Greg Popovich, R.C. Buford, Brian Wright, a lot of the stats guys met with UT coaches on the men's and women's side. There's a really good relationship there. And you know, sharing information, working together. You know, the Spurs are trying to expand their market from just San Antonio to on up to Austin, on south into Mexico, and that's part of it. And I think the Spurs just don't want to feel like they're infringing, crowding in on the Longhorns and having people buy basketball tickets at a time when the Longhorns are also trying to buy basketball tickets. So even though it might make the most sense Spurs-wise to have those 2 Austin games during the rodeo road trip, I think it's probably going to settle about where it is now. You know, conference tournament time, middle of March, and that works okay.
And those tickets are going to sell like hotcakes, aren't they? I mean, they sold out those games last year when they were just terrible and no really compelling interest in the team itself anyway. I think you bring Wemby up there this year. I think those tickets are going to go through the roof.
They're going to make a lot of money off that those games will both be sold out, even if it's not like Austin locals or people driving up from San Antonio. Like the South by deal might bring people who are in town for that, come by, watch an NBA game. That could be interesting. So it seems like those games are going to be a part of the schedule for a while now. There's no longer the freak out about the Spurs moving up there for good. That never made any sense to begin with. Now that Wemby is around and we're talking downtown arena, we're talking at some point the move from the Frostbank Center to someplace new, like that will be in San Antonio. I think we know that. But having Austin as a partner, having those games on the schedule, I think that makes sense for a while too. We did not talk about the arena naming rights thing the last podcast. I think it had just happened. We might have mentioned it, but not gotten into it. But I think that's another example of the Wemby effect, in that last year, the summer of 2022, that's when the AT&T sponsorship ran out. They had signed their deal through those first 20 years of the arena. And the Spurs were free to sign any new corporate sponsor they wanted in the summer of 2022 for a new deal to have their name on the illustrious, the renowned barn in the middle of the stockyards there on the east side. And they didn't find anybody. And so the Spurs and AT&T kind of came to an agreement of, hey, let's extend this indefinitely. I'm not sure how much money AT&T paid to extend it. If they paid anything at all to extend it, it was kind of like, let's just leave the name on there so it's there while the Spurs look for a new partner. I don't think it was coincidental that they announced their new partner the same summer that they landed Victor Wembanyama.
I think what you're saying is Fred's fish fry missed its window.
Good story in the Express News Sunday on Fred's on the longevity of Fred's by Renee Guzman.
And about the long-standing rumors about what actually keeps Fred fish fry in business.
I enjoyed that it addressed that urban legend. That was nice.
Yes. Anyway, to relate this back to your local cagers, like people want to do business with them now. And Frost Bank, the local institution who's been around for over 100 years and has been a longtime partner of the Spurs, they were ponying up that money. It's a pretty significant amount of money to put their name on the arena, even though they had their patch on the jerseys and they'd been a part of the new facility out at the Rock at La Cantera. They didn't do that until they were convinced that they were going to have their name on the arena of a team that was going to win some games that people were going to care about. And Victor Wembanyama created that. And I think that's just sort of a sign of things to come for, I mean, you throw in the 19 nationally televised games on the schedule. Like, people want to do business with the Spurs again. And I know that's not what fans root for. That's not what fans tune into the podcast for, is to hear about how much money the team is making and how good they're doing as a business. But it all kind of plays together. And if you weren't aware before of the Victor Wembanyama effect, all these things kind of add up and give you an idea.
Yeah, and I know what you're saying, Mike, about listeners, viewers may not be all that into that, but it's huge. It's huge for a franchise that has traditionally had to scrape and claw for every dollar in a very limited market where the sponsorship dollars are very thin. I mean, it's huge. It's huge for this franchise. Just as we knew the moment those balls came up, ping pong balls came up, everything changed for the better for the Spurs. It can't be understated, where they are financially now, or where they're headed to be financially now. What was that quote from Peter J. Holt? Things were looking good for us, but now it's through the moon, or something like that. He said in Chicago on lottery night.
Yeah.
And it's so true and so important.
Yeah. If for no other reason than to stop people from worrying about them moving someplace.
Yeah.
Because now that never was going to happen, but now it's more absurd than it was before because the sponsorship dollars are there, and this team is going to make money. It's going to be able to spend money in the future on players, which is what the fans care about, and it's from top to bottom a really, really big summer for the local Cagers. I guess we could segue there when we're talking about players. Well, go ahead, Jeff, before we do that.
I got one question before
good.
we wrap up this topic. So do we think that the fine folks at Taco Palenque choosing to sponsor this podcast, is that part of the Wemby effect? Like, are we drafting that as well?
It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. How are things? Again, we're not divulging too much, but you're still there at the Palenque. Like, things still happen there. People excited?
Yeah. I'm looking at all the food I'm going to eat for a while. Checking out store tacos.
Limited time.
Probably going to the margaritas look good, but I'm going to forego those at this time of day and just enjoy my my diet soda.
Okay.
Will it be your first venture into that kind of cuisine since we ate at a taqueria in Springfield, Mass, Jeff?
No, I can't say that it is. I live in South Texas, so that's about an every other day experience for me.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but
we're about to lose our credibility if we admit that we ventured into a Tex-Mex place in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Well, I can tell you why we went there.
It was the only place that was open.
It had the most important quality of a restaurant at that point of the day. It was open.
Being open. Correct.
Being open.
I thought it was pretty darn authentic, but I thought
it wasn't as good as the food that the fine folks at Taco Palenque.
No question there, but the ambiance was pretty South Texas.
What we did there was adapt. That is what, make adjustments on the fly. This is what your local Cagers were doing this summer. When they landed Victor Wembanyama, they had lots of salary cap room available, but maybe this wasn't the best summer to use it. So you make some interesting little trades to kind of get over the salary floor. I think they're actually going to be an over the cap team for this year. But none of that cap space in the future was sacrificed. They're still going to go into next year with plenty to use if they want to use it. We can look ahead a little bit in the waning moments of this podcast to the start of training camp in October. And the story of the preseason, aside from Victor Wembanyama, will be that I think they have 3 players too many under contract. Do they not, Jeff?
I lost counts, but somewhere that yes, let's say yes.
Let's say yes. So you're going to have and from what I've been told, like, there's not anybody right now that the Brain Trust has earmarked as a definite cut. I think that the most likely one is your Kim Birch. He of the not quite healthy body since he's been a Spur.
Like, guys who have not yet played for them, like, have been on the roster and have not logged a minute, like, that would be kind of on my list as guys that might be gone.
So guys who have not logged a minute would be your campaign.
Well, no,
Cameron Payne.
I mean, guys that have. I was referring specifically to Kim Birch, who was on the roster for half of last season, but did not log a minute. Like, to me, that would be a good sign that they're probably going to move on from him.
Well, as Pop pointed out, his body wasn't good.
Right.
When we were asked for the medical assessment of why he wasn't playing.
I'm telling you.
Okay. Well, okay. So then you need to drop 2 more, and that list. I mean, you've got I think Cameron Payne probably could be good for this team as a backup point guard or as a point guard, even as a starter at some point if they needed that. You've got your Chetty Osman. You've got your Reggie Bullock. All these guys are brought in for trades that kind of address the salary floor thing.
Devontae Graham and Juan Marks.
Devontae Graham, I think, is a player who was acquired at midseason last year, did some good things, but probably is not a long-term cornerstone.
With the addition of Payne, the cutting board.
Correct. And Graham also has a suspension that he's dealing with due to a problem that he had before arriving with the Spurs. He's also not been... You see a lot of Spurs around all summer long. The veterans who were at Summer League with Victor, like Mamu was around, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, on down a list. You didn't see some of these guys who may just be new, who may be having other things to do this summer, but that kind of gives you a tell as to who's going to be around. I think it could be a competitive camp for some of these guys.
Oh yeah.
As to who makes the team, who maybe attracts interest elsewhere to get flipped for a pick or something in the future. Like they wouldn't necessarily have to cut 3 guys. You could trade 1 or 2 of them, but that could be on the list of preseason storylines that this team has. Anything else? The roster is kind of set now. I don't think there's going to be any September trades coming up. Any just broad stroke thoughts about what the whole thing looks like heading into Wemby year 1?
I think it's still a roster. I mean, the roster's set, like you said, but it's still a transitional period here. I think they're still kind of keeping their powder dry to kind of, what am I trying to say?
They're in no rush.
Yeah,
you're using a lot of
cliches. Go into this
cliches.
offseason thinking we have to build a playoff team around Wemby in 2023-24. And so I think that's kind of what you're seeing. You're seeing some guys that are clearly transitional players that are maybe here just to help you get to the next era, and they will help you for this season. But they're not part of – I think there's a clear line between guys that are part of the long-term Wemby project and guys that are here just to help ease the transition to that project. I think it's pretty clear which guys fall into which camp, and then there's some that are sort of like maybe they're part of that. We have to see, that they just want to look at guys like Mamu and Charles Bassey and people on that end of the bench,
and the other Frenchman, Julian
CD.
Well,
I think he's going to be good. I don't know what I mean by good. I don't think I mean all-star, but I think he's going to be a guy that can help them sooner more than later, especially with what he can do on the defensive end. I mean, they're putting together a roster of players that are still young now, and they're still trying to figure things out, but they're going to be able to put out some really monster defensive lineups at some point if all this comes together. When you throw in the guys we mentioned, plus Sohan, plus Vassell, guys like that are just long and switchable and ferocious. Like, I think CD could be he can help you defensively. I think year 1, but whether he can do the rest of it good enough to see time is kind of what you'd look for in him.
He's probably going to see some Austin time.
Oh,
and
for sure.
The other French thing I was referring to that's kind of in between is the Julian Champagny, who's not French, but Champagne is French. That was really, really terrible. But he's kind of a guy like he's transitional in a way, like he's kind of a space filler for this season. And Mamu's kind of the same way.
Right.
But he could turn himself into part of something in the future. Those are those middle of the road type of guys. You have your clear long-term pieces, Sohan, Vassell, Johnson. I think Zach Collins is probably part of that. Trey Jones is kind of part of that.
Malachi Branham in there too.
Malachi Branham's part of that. You have your clear placeholder types. All the names we mentioned earlier, the Campaign, the Bullock, the Osman, those types who are just around to help in the short term. Doug McDermott is kind of there. Doug's a really good Spur, but he's not going to be part of the championship future. He's kind of helping to build a culture, win some games now, but placeholder-ish. And then you have those middle guys like you said, Charles Bassey, Champagny, Mamu, those types where they're sort of placeholders now, but maybe they can become more than that, and we'll see. We got more out of this podcast than some of the people on this panel expected. I think we're getting to our usual length. There wasn't too much filler. There wasn't too much just get us through the year, through the podcast type of stuff. Like we're talking about some of these players, these veteran players.
I think it's the equivalent of a championship level team showing up in let's say Charlotte again on a Tuesday in January, and you think they're just going to mail it in, but no, they give you a championship level effort. and they beat the crap out of those Hornets. And that's what we did. We beat the crap out of this podcast.
Was this a championship level effort? I don't know.
I
think we can do a lot better. I think we can do a lot better.
I miss those wrap ups, playing off of Thad Young and the positive approach. I really miss those.
I really do too.
Thad Young was. I think this was an effort that Thad Young would have been proud of. Was it like did we go into this podcast thinking we were going to win any podcasting awards? No. Do podcasting awards exist? We'll never know. We're never going to win any of them.
The potties,
but we put in the effort. We were professional for the most part. Like 3/4 of us were professional. I won't say which one was might have been questionable.
We all know what you mean. I just really,
but we gave it our shot.
We wouldn't talk about Tom Orsborn that way.
I know. I'm trying to be nice. We gave it. We gave it an effort. That's all you can do. We will be back in a couple of weeks to give it another effort, and keep that effort up as long as we can through the season. And until we see you again, take care of each other and keep it real.